Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Ronsley, and this is episode number 48 of my AI Love Affair. Today, we're talking about all the cool things I learned at VaynerX. Well, I've had to break it down, but the most important things I learned hanging out at VaynerX. This was a really, really important conversation. This one and the next one, make sure you attend because the next one is with the legend himself, Gary Vaynerchuk. He sat down with me and talked with me about artificial intelligence and empathy. But today I'm going to talk about the stuff that I learned working and hanging out at the VaynerMedia offices. This is really important, how they think about content. We're going to talk about acting like a media company, what that actually means, what that looks like. We're going to talk about document versus create, how that works, and how to say the same thing 73,000 times. Come, let's learn.
Hey, it's Ronsley. Welcome, you AI geek, to this podcast, My AI Love Affair. Consider this podcast your digital compass, guiding you through the labyrinth that is business growth using artificial intelligence. Running a business as a creative can sometimes be like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. But what if you had a secret tool that could align all the colors for you? That is AI. It's like a master key unlocking multiple doors. Thanks for being here. Let's learn.
All right. I suppose the first place to start is here. I think the foundations are super important. Every time I think about how I create content, I always start with the fundamentals. When you think about watching me create some of the previous growth tactics and some of the other episodes in this particular podcast, you see how I start with principles and mistakes to avoid first. I guess some of the foundations out of the way so that we can then focus on the steps, then use artificial intelligence on top of that. And I think that's a really important way to think about how to incorporate AI into your business. So in this particular instance, we're going to talk about how to create versus document. And we're also going to talk about how we can create this really interesting media agency. So what does it mean to act like a media company? According to the VaynerX brand, the Sasha Group, we focus on distribution and on content. Media companies have a clear brand purpose and articulation of that purpose, and they own their story and the distribution of it. Now, think about what those lines actually mean. It's really important to think about how the clear brand purpose is an important part of that and how we are required by the laws of business that we are meant to articulate the purpose of that to the people that care about that. So how does this actually work? So if you're saying that this is the way to do it, how does it work? So I'm going to show you this really cool slide that they showed us, which is where good content exists. It's the intersection of brand, your audience, and the context. So let's break each of these down. First up, I always talk about this actually, and this is a very good reflection on how some of the things that I say a little bit differently, but overlap in this world. So the first thing that we always start with, I've always started this with, this is when someone creates a podcast with us, is speak your truth. We first do the exercise of being a truth speaker before we figure out who's the audience that cares about that truth. And in this instance, it's no different. The brand is know yourself. And this is the most important part of that section. Is first is your truth and your self being the most important part. Then you go, who is this audience? What do they care about? And why is it that they would care about my truth, right? And then here is the context. Know what is happening right now to get the most hard-hitting content to the audience that they actually want to consume. Because sometimes we create content that's way too ahead of its time. We all do that, especially ones who've been in the game and in the world of expertise, whatever the expertise is, for a long time. It's really important to meet the market where they're at. So this context is super important because when the context and the brand comes together, you know how to relate to the now. You can talk about the current platforms, the tech and the trends, and that's what makes that content really powerful and pop. When the context and the audience comes together, you can create what you know what's important to the audience in today's culture. And when the brand and you come together, you understand how you play a role in the lives of the people you're talking about. And when you bring all of those amazing things together, good content exists. And we asked Maribel Lara, who is the VP at VaynerMedia. Make sure you check out her episode on We Are Podcast. I interviewed her in depth about voice representation and the reason we all need to use our voice and put it out there and document how we live our lives and our businesses. But we asked her how we should document versus create.
Video content, that's podcast content. It could be his whole concept of document versus create, which is essentially have somebody like D-Rock follow you around all day without a plan for what's going to come of that content. We were breaking this down for somebody yesterday. So we're going to try to break you of some things over the course of today. One is this idea that before you go into shooting video, you have to know exactly what the output is going to be. That's scripting, right? Daily V was never scripted. It was literally somebody with a camera following Gary all day long. And then during the day, them taking note on, oh, that was awesome. What a magical conversation Gary just had with that person. Or he just dropped some amazing knowledge at 3:00 at this minute mark in that video. That's what document versus create. It's not script your day and plan your day. It's literally, it is much easier to watch something you've captured and identify poignant moments and great opportunities for content than it is to try to figure out from the get-go what it is you're going to capture. It's really an efficiency.
So the other thing, I suppose, to figure out is how much content is enough content, and how do you actually put out something that sticks with your brand and make sure that your brand is something that people understand and you're not confusing them with too much information. How do you stay on point? How do you stay on topic? How do you create? And when I showed you the Venn diagram earlier, you see how there's a way to fit content across a certain place, but then you have to then make sure the content goes out, and you have to create a lot of content. So I asked Gary how to create content, and this is what he had to say.
The biggest compliment I get in my comments or DMs is when, like, Gary Vee, you say the same shit. I'm tired of you. Biggest compliment.
I didn't think you saw that. I'm sorry.
Biggest compliment, right? Because, yeah, like, what do you want me to make up shit I don't believe in? I'm sorry, I believe in, like, there's only so many things you can believe in. And yes, I'm trying to interject. Today I'll say sexy red, 5 years ago I'll say the baby, but I'm saying the same shit. I'm gonna incorporate it to make it relevant. And I may pick up new adjectives or expand my vocabulary. This stuff is tried and true. This is why it's worked. Like, this is why it's like simple, like, yes. And I intuitively knew it when I was a kid, which is why I did what I did. But now I'm fucking like double winning. I'm like, knew it, and it's true.
Okay, it would be really wrong of me to not mention strategic, organic, creative, or SOC, as they call it within the Vayner world. That's a really nice, endearing term because of the term cohorts. Really important concept for you to understand. And it was really mind-blowing for me to understand. And I really thank the Vayner team, the Sasha group, for putting this out there and teaching us how to do this, because they talk about strategic, organic, creative. Strategic, always non-contextual creative, designed to build brand, grow community, and make your brand more relevant. Remember that part here, that there is no selling, right? To see how very focused it is on creating brand, which is the most important piece, because it grows value and it grows the value of the brand. So what does that look like? Now, here, this is a really important part, because here they talk about starting with cohorts, and cohorts are the foundation for relevance within smaller pieces of your audience. What does that mean? Now, if you have a big audience, there are little pieces of audience sizes that care about slightly different things within the main audience piece. And if we can identify those main cohorts, we can pair those cohorts with culturally relevant signals, which is relevant content. And that's what they're talking about. So finding the cohort, finding those little groups within your main audience, and then creating content relevant for those people are really, really the thing that's working today. So I went back and tried to think to myself, if that's the case, how do we put this in action? How do we go and create this again? how do we make sure that we stay on brand, and how do we make sure that we create strategic, organic content? This is Gary again.
This is why, like, back to saying the same thing 800 different ways. Somebody the other day, literally in comments, because this is what I do, I read them. Gary, what is it? 10 times a post? 13 times? 23 posts a day? Like, you say all these different numbers. I reply, I'm like, bro, it's because I'm just living my life. It's just a lot, as much as humanly possible. As once and for all, as much as humanly possible. You're all gonna be doing it with AI anyway. You all in 9 years are gonna have 4,000 ads a day. That goes back to, like, how are you gonna break through? You're actually not sure, but you kind of know. It's the same thing that closes, like, why I'm good at content is I watch what works in real life and then I just make content out of it. What was the sentence I said to make the person buy it? This is why I'm unstoppable. I've been selling since I was 5. You know, I've been practicing. I didn't read a book on how to fucking, what's that book? Influence people and win over, what is it called? Like, thank you. I just did it since I was 5. Of course I didn't have to read that shit. I lived it. I know why I was popular. I know why I was the 5th grade president. I know that not why 94 people said no to me when I rang their doorbell to shovel snow, just like I know why the 6 people said yes. And why the baseball card sold. And why when I changed the display cases at my dad's store, it sold. And why when I brought small bottles of wine at the front of the register instead of peanuts, that was good because the small bottles of wine were $10 and the peanuts were 9 cents. That was good. I saw it. And I saw the 87 things that didn't work when I did it. I'm living it. You need to live it. How do you break through? By doing so much content for so long that you start to get an understanding of the thematics that work. If you think that I woke up one morning and said, you know what we're gonna do in fucking August 2023 on my Instagram in this highly competitive environment? We're gonna make a meme that captures the essence of the video, and we're gonna do a 2-post carousel because that's gonna get the most organic reach. I promise you I had no fucking idea. If you think I thought making photos that has a picture of me in it, that then says the person that's sending you this thinks, and then whatever the fuck we've written, was gonna be the consistent million organic reach post, that is when I first posted the first one, I'm like, this has no shot. Reps. How'd you get those muscles? Outside of fucking cheating, which you can't do in business, no steroids in business, bro. How'd you get those muscles? I fucking worked, right? Even the really funny meme and culture of like, you're not ugly, you're poor. I think about that. I'm like, right, there's a proxy that made someone look more attractive. It was called money. Like, one could see that cynically in the way that I think we should, because I think it fucks up people. But there's a different way to look at it, which is like, nothing happens unless you do something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, of course, like, one could envy if you put beauty on a pedestal, like somebody having the ability to have plastic surgery and this and that and that, but there's still something that happened. Otherwise it wouldn't have happened. Like, there's always cause and effect. We're in full control of this, right? You guys can answer this. You can all do what I do if you put in the 700,000 pieces of content that I did. You won't need me anymore. I don't want anyone to need me. I want them all to do what I'm saying and never need me again.
In this episode, we learned about a lot of things. We learned about strategic organic content. We learned about how to create in context and how that Venn diagram creates really important content that hits and really connects with your audience. And we spoke about how to create 70,000 different pieces of content and how to put that out there. But I think the reason for this being such an important part of this episode and this particular podcast is content is going to become such an important part of our lives. It's going to be one of the most important things we do from a business standpoint. And you remember the time when Instagram and people were talking about posting on Instagram and how regularly you should post on Instagram. So I kind of really repeat here, when you're creating content with artificial intelligence, it can be very easy to create generic content. But with the context that I provided here, along with help from a lot of experience from the Vayner Group, from the Sasha Group, and some very experienced marketers on the planet, I'm trying to give you the idea of how to create content with artificial intelligence context and from frameworks that actually help your audience. Now, the tendency comes from us to feel like, okay, we're going to create a lot of content and generic content is what we'll end up creating. And here's what I want us to really step back and go, well, we can create at speed, but we can also create meaningful content that actually hits home and creates a connection with our audience, especially because there are so many different platforms right now. You don't even know which platform is going to work for you depending on the current market and style. So testing signals with your cohorts, by the way, signals and cohorts are very VaynerMedia terms. They are not my terms. They're terms that they've invented and they're theirs. So I want to give them credit for this episode, for the learning, and for the next one, which is going to come up. And it's all about artificial intelligence. I'm going to talk about empathy and artificial intelligence, how it applies, why it's going to be the biggest conversation of our lifetime, and why it's so important for you to do this the right way with the right people around you, and to make sure that you are creating the right impact, because artificial intelligence will easily be the biggest conversation of our lifetime.
If you have just finished watching this entire episode and gone, wow, this is a lot of value, I want to say this. A lot of the content that is covered in this episode has been from the 4Ds of the Sasha Group, which is a VaynerX company. They run this twice a year, probably a couple of more times a year. And it is probably one of the things that I get most value out of, to understand what is happening in the market and how I can apply it to my business. So if you are interested, check out the link that's part of the show notes for the 4Ds that it's run by the Sasha Group, and you will get a lot of value. Not only will Gary look and talk to you about your business and get very specific and give you advice to what you can do, but also you get the whole VaynerX company that helps small to medium businesses really audit your business, your social, and give you advice as to where you can get the most leverage considering what's currently working in the market. It is the best money you can ever spend. Join me on the next episode, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Wait for the one with Gary Vee. It's the next one coming up. Hey, AI Geek. Thanks for listening. Your job doesn't stop here. I want you to lend your voice to the conversation. So you can join those conversations, discussions, new trainings, new recordings, and the rest of the AI Geeks by going to aigeeks.co/Discord. Also, share this podcast with a friend, another potential AI Geek. Until then, much love.